Our AM Minnesota program today because we have Faribault's fire chief with us. He's able to read minds. Dusty Dienst. Good morning, Dusty.
Morning, Gordy.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Of course, we decided to do this last week. Last week we had the tragic house fire, right? Or was it the week before?
2 weeks ago.
Okay. Time flies by when you're having fun, which I'm doing in life. So a couple weeks ago, a family of 5 was displaced. They lost some of their pets. Very tragic incident that happened that you guys covered, and I know you said at the time that there were some things you wanted to discuss that came up during that. For example, they had working smoke detectors, which is why they're with us today.
Yeah, that's a key thing we can take away from incidents like this. As tragic as they are, there was no injuries, and that's really the first thing you need to look at. Yeah, the family is displaced and things are messed up in their life right now. But because of working smoke detectors, the timing that they did, the detectors did wake them up, wake up the parents to let them know that there was a fire, and then they got everybody out the way they were supposed to. And to the father's credit, he did grab an extinguisher and attempt to go back in, and we're okay with that. You know, you get out first, and then if you think you can, you know, it's your property, your home, you're going to want to do everything you can do to try to save that. But like we know at the fire station, the smoke is just not going to let you do what you think you can do. So he went in there with the right thought. I'm going to go in there and I can knock it down, or maybe even put it out. But the smoke wouldn't let him do it. He didn't push it. He just got out of there and, you know, let us with our stuff come do it.
Yeah, realized that, well, we better let the professionals handle it.
Yeah, and when we teach fire extinguisher classes, which we do to a lot of companies, a lot of people in the community, but we do say that if you think you can take care of it with an extinguisher, or at least knock it down a little bit to keep it from growing, you know, go ahead and do that after we give them the training. But that's why we promote having fire extinguishers near exits. Don't put them, you know, commonly we see them in the kitchen next to the stove because that's where the fire is going to be. Well, if you can't get to it because that's where the fire is, or from the heat or the smoke, then it doesn't do you any good. So yeah, putting them near exits.
I think we talked about that last time you were on, because I always had mine right next to the stove.
Yeah, so, you know, a good place to put it if you have an attached garage is on the way out through the garage. So you don't want to put it outside, or none of us are going to put it in a box in our living room, but like you have in commercial buildings, but you're going to want to have it near an exit. And if you know it's there, you can attempt to use it.
Yeah, on our post, told people they could text us questions if they had any questions for the fire chief today. The number is 507-838-5233, 507-838-5233 if you had any questions for the chief. Were there any other issues that came out of that fire that we wanted to discuss today?
I think the other issue that we'd like to just touch on a little bit are you know, teaching your children about the dangers of playing with matches or lighters. I know it's a touchy subject, but it was a reminder that it does happen. It can happen here in Faribault. It did. So it's good to have that talk with your children. We always have that talk in October when we're in the schools with the kindergartners and the 3rd graders, and anytime we get a chance to talk to kids, we talk about, you know, that fire is a tool, not a toy, and not to play with it. So it is a unfortunate reminder that it can, you know, be a problem. And
well, I told you when I was a little kid, I set my wicker wastebasket in my bedroom on fire, and I had a sore rear end for a long time.
Yeah, part of that doesn't surprise me a little bit.
Hey, come on now.
But I mean, we are, especially children, we're curious people, and, you know, a lot of times we learn the hard way, and you know, fortunately for this family, nobody got hurt because of it. Yep, it's their house is I want to call it destroyed, but for the most part, it's a mess, and it would be an eye opener for a lot of people if they could see what a fire in one room of your home can do to the rest of the home with no flames impinging on anything but one room. The smoke damage and heat damage is it's unbelievable. You can tell people, but they need to really see it.
Right. How hot does that fire get?
Well, it really varies, but there was a distinct line. This fire was in one end of the house in a bedroom, and the kitchen was on the other end of the house.
I'm gonna need you to have to hold that thought, because I gotta get this market update. That was dumb of me, 15 seconds talking about that in the first segment. The main reason I think they got out was the smoke detectors, but I remember asking you when we did the interview following the fire whether or not they had a plan, and I seem to recall that you said, well, you hadn't had that question of him yet.
Yeah, I never followed up on that to find out if they knew, if they had an actual plan that they had practiced, or if you just knew that that's what they were going to do, or just did it because, when we talk about having a plan, it's not really overwhelming and have to have a real detailed plan. It's get out and meet somewhere, and so it's not hard to figure that out. You can make that plan on a whim, or you can have it ahead of time. Of course, having it ahead of time is always better. But I'm assuming he took control of his family, got them all out, and what he did from there. Thankfully, we had a police officer that lived right across the road, and that's where that's where the family was when we got there. They had let them come in the house because they were not dressed to be outside. Right. Still in PJs and stocking feet, no coats, so they were brought in.
This was a little after 7 in the morning.
Yep. So they were brought inside because it wasn't freezing cold, but it wasn't standing around in PJs weather either. So.
Yeah. But I know Mike Monge always used to say you don't have a plan unless you practice it.
Yeah, it's at 7 in the morning. A lot of people are not that deep into sleep anymore. It's getting close to time to get up. If you do that same thing at 2 in the morning when you're in REM sleep or you're really out of it, it's a little harder to adjust. It's dark out. There was light, so they had some things going for them there. But yep, it's still what you do in the daylight and have to do the same thing in the dark it's more difficult in the dark.
Well, I'm pretty groggy when I wake up in the morning. I know that.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to point out is we talked about when we set this up was we talk about changing our smoke detector batteries, and we hit it pretty hard in October because it's fire prevention month and all that stuff going on, and we do it when it's time to
change the clock.
Change the clock. Well, we changed the clocks here lately, and pretty much nobody said boo about it and went through. So especially if you have smoke detectors that are battery powered only, it's time to switch those batteries out again.
Yeah, well, I try to remind people every year we change the clocks, I change my batteries, although I forgot to do it this year.
Well, and here again, we hit it hard in October because of the timing, and spring comes and there's other things on our minds and it doesn't really come up, but this was a good opportunity to bring it up.
And then changing those detectors too, I know I've shared with you the fact that mine are pretty old. You need to change those every, what, 10 years?
Yeah, well, 7 to 10. They used to always be 10, and now they're backing off on that and saying 7 to 10. So if nothing else, for sure, do a test of them. I mean, we walk by them every single day, and they're up out of reach, and maybe you have to use a broom handle or something to push the button, but to make sure that they work. But putting a new battery in there is good, but if the detector itself doesn't work, the new battery is not going to fix it.
That's true. You're right. You got to test that smoke detector as well. So grass fires, I know we were going to touch on that too, although we do have a spring snowstorm that's supposedly heading our way.
Yeah, you can hope that it doesn't, Gordy, but it's coming. I know you're trying to be optimistic about it not coming, but it's coming. Sorry.
It's heading our way.
Yes.
But it won't be here long, and it won't be long in the grass will be drying out, and it'll be prime grass fire season. Central Minnesota already has a burning ban.
Yep, and even watching the news this morning before I left, there was somewhere up in the metro, one of the cameras along the road picked up a pretty good sized fire alongside the road. So even though conditions aren't really conducive right now, that grass, I always say that grass wants to burn, needs to burn. That's kind of in the big picture, the management of itself. Back before we used to put them out, that's how grasslands stayed grasslands and didn't get grown over by trees, was they killed the trees. So it wants to burn, and yep, the snow is going to put a damper on things for a while when it comes to grass fires, but it'll dry back out pretty quickly with a little wind, and so we have to be very careful with fire, whether it's burning barrels or recreational fires. We got to watch that every spring.
In the last few weeks of really nice weather, we haven't had a lot of grass fires. Of course, we had some rain mixed in too, which I think helped.
Yeah, well, I think the only one I've heard in the county of anything of size, there was one in Morristown here a couple weekends ago. But it's inevitable that we'll get some, and if you really look at the grass and pay attention to the snow that we did have this year, really knocked the grass down. So it's really flattened out, which keeps the flame height from getting too crazy. It helps keep them a little bit at bay. They're not as impressive, if you will, or as hard to handle when the grass is laying on the ground as opposed to when it's all standing up. So, but it's still, we'll still have some. It'd be naive to think that we won't ever have any.
I was just thinking, how many years you've been with the Faribault Fire Department?
22 years.
Because the methods of fighting grass fires have changed since I moved here, well, it'll be 30 years ago in June.
Yeah, it's and it comes and goes with CRP too. A lot of CRP is converted back to cropland, so we don't have as much as we did at one time. But we also pay more attention to people's health and well-being, firefighters, if you will. Grass fire, like I mentioned earlier, grass is supposed to burn, and once it burns, we don't have to worry about it burning at least this season. So we've kind of taken the approach where if it's not going to affect any structures or lives, you know, we'll meet you at the road. Or around here, you know, we hear on the news the big forest fires and the wildland fires they have out west around in the mountains and in the trees. But around here, when the grass fire gets to the wood line, that's when we can take care of it a lot easier, because we don't have the same topography and the same setup that they have out west, where when a grass fire gets to the wood line, it usually mellows out. It's a blanket of leaves. Leaves don't burn very well. They're usually pretty wet, so that's a good place where we can really have at it. Then when it gets there, it's a lot smaller flames, and we don't put people in danger as much as we would if we tried to stand in waist-high grass and put it out, or try to work on it out in the grass.
But you have ATVs now, things that weren't around back
then.
then.
Polaris Ranger that we have now is a wonderful tool. So as much as, you know, they can be enjoyable, if you will, to work on, because we look at the aspects of working on fires that typically are destroying people's properties and affecting their lives. Grass fire typically doesn't present that, so sometimes they can be a good learning tool to use, a good management tool, if you will. We do some prescribed burns here and there, so they're okay to work on once in a while. I hesitate to say fun, but you know, in the firefighter world, they are. If there's a fire that you want to work on that you want to call fun, it's definitely not a structure fire. It can be a grass fire because of the dynamics of what is destroying, or in most cases of a grass fire, what it's actually helping. So firefighters like to aggressively go after them, and sometimes we got to kind of pull on the reins a little bit and say, you know, that's okay, that's a lot of work, but how about we let it get over to that waterway that's a little greener and wetter, or let it come up to the road ditch and get it from the road, and you know, not kill ourselves or put ourselves at risk to put out grass.
Yeah, we were talking about the heat involved. Of course, it varies fire to fire, as you were mentioning before we hit that market update, about just how hot these fires get. And you were saying that in this home, in particular, the microwave melted.
Yeah, so what you'll see, and it's not news to anybody, but heat and smoke rises, and more of the heat and the smoke is hot, so that rises too. But with the inside of the house, there's obviously a ceiling, so we call it banking down. So the smoke and heat goes up and slowly works its way down. So in this last home, there was some unique characteristics. You could walk around. They were talking about the kitchen, which was on the opposite side of the house from where the fire was. How the microwave that was mounted up above the stove, the handle and parts of the microwave were drooping and melting. And then you got to the dishwasher that was down another 2 feet, and the plastic was just fine. It hadn't banked down that far. A couple things that were on the countertops were starting to bubble. Plastic stuff was starting to bubble, so the heat that was generated to make that get to that point was coming down that low. But you know, it didn't get any lower, and it's anybody's guess as whether it's when we put the fire out through the window, or more than likely when the fire got hot enough and broke the window in that room, and now the flames were going out the window and releasing some of the heat, so not all the heat was going into the home. There's a couple different dynamics going on there, but that's why we always say when you wake up and there's smoke, you don't go walking out, you need to crawl, because it's hot up there.
Yeah, when spring grass gets dry and we're thinking that prime grass fire season, obviously you need to use your noggin before you do any burning, right? You know, if it's a windy day, obviously you don't burn.
Yeah, the new state permit system, it does a good job. It's not brand new this year, it's a year or so old. If there is a burning ban on and you're not sure, when you call that number up, it will not give you a verification number, which means there's a burn ban on, so you can't burn. But we do need to listen to KDHL and watch the websites. We put those things out there, the burning bans, burning restrictions. Certain restrictions will allow you sometimes to still have a recreational fire. Ban, you can't have anything. One of the things we see a lot with grass fires is we can trace them back to like burning barrels in the rural area, and I just want to put out there that burning garbage is illegal in the state of Minnesota. I know a lot of people do it, and I have neighbors that do it too. It's one that goes on quite a bit, but it is illegal to burn garbage in an area where garbage pickup is available. So,
which is virtually everywhere.
Well, yeah, I would say in a lot of the 3/4 of the state anyway, there's pickup available. So
you've come a long way there, Dusty. When I was a young lad, which is longer ago than when you were a young lad, but I remember everybody in town, I lived in Spring Valley, small town, but everybody was burning their garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no garbage hauling service back
right.
then.
Yeah. So it's yeah, it's a controversial issue because some still do it, some but it is not good for our air, and it's not fair to the neighbors, that depending on which way the wind's blowing, because that is not good for you to breathe that in, and you have the right to be out in your yard and doing things, and if somebody else's what they're doing affects that, that can be an issue, and you know, the smoke's going to go where the wind pushes it. We don't have that control. So
a lot of people will be doing some yard work here when things get better for that, and you know, they'll be doing raking and they'll try to get rid of some of their brush.
Yeah, and that you can do that if you incorporate that into your 3x3 burning pit and you call a recreational fire. But also remember, leaves, if you're raking leaves, I like to say leaves don't burn. If you really watch them, they just smolder and smoke. So that's, if you're in town, that's what our area down at the wastewater treatment plant, help me out here, what am I looking for? The compost pile, thank you, is for. You're supposed to bring that down there and dispose of it down there. But even if you have a recreational fire and you're doing everything according to the law and the smoke is going to your neighbors and they complain, even a legal fire can be put out or need to be put out if it is bothering somebody else.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. Again, if you have a question for the chief, you can certainly text it to me at 507-838-5233, and we'll certainly be sure to ask the chief about that. You had a couple of notes you said you were making before coming over. We touch on most of that? Or?
Well, not on one because it's a new development, but I also want people to be aware of the snow that's coming. They're predicting it to be pretty wet and heavy, so it's going to melt. I'm not saying that not to go out and shovel it, but make sure that you are prepared to shovel wet, heavy snow. It's not your normal snow, and not probably a snow that you're going to be able to get behind the shovel and just push it out of the way. You may have to lift it up and pick it up and throw it. So, you know, if you're not in shape to be, if your back's not in shape to be shoveling snow, get a hold of your neighbors, have them come help you out. But
you're saying this is a heart attack snow? It's
the heart attack snow. This is the snow that when we do EMT refresher that we use as an example of the 911 call for the chest pain. And you know, one of the questions or one thing that we have to go through is to try to find out what they were doing to cause that chest pain. And I always like to use the example that I was out shoveling snow, and this is the snow that would do that, would overexert yourself trying to get rid of, especially if we get as much as they're saying.
Yeah, and unfortunately you can't snow plow around the steps.
Yeah,
or in the
there's some shoveling at most places that has to happen regardless. So, you know, if you have to shovel, take smaller bites of the snow, if you will. You don't have to take it all in one big scoop. And if you can't, call your neighbor to come help you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Plus, you want to have those fire hydrants cleared out too, right?
Yep. Hopefully we won't get that much, but yeah, we want to still be able to get to those fire hydrants. we've had a fair amount of structure fires here in the last month, unfortunately, and we've used hydrants on I think every one of them. So yeah, they do get used, and you don't want to use Murphy's Law where it won't be mine, so I don't have to uncover it, because we know in the fire services that's the one that we're going to need.
Yeah, before that fire, the one that was 2 weeks ago, there was another one on a house here in town.
Yeah, we had one on Old 4th Street there. We had one down on First. It's kind of out of the off the beaten path on, I think it was First Street, down by by the apartment building, Posing Glass in that area. It was up in a room upstairs, so that one was confined to the room of origin. Didn't do quite as much damage as a couple of the other ones we've had, but yeah, we've had a kind of a bad run here in the last month of structure fires.
Was it the same deal, playing with fire or something?
No, that one's has some other aspects to it that we won't go into.
Okay, not a problem. We don't have to go into it. Anything else that you wanted to touch on that I wouldn't think of asking?
Well, severe weather is coming up, so Severe Weather Awareness Week's a few weeks away. You'll be seeing some more stuff come out on that. Hopefully we can get together and talk. I want to remind everybody that not to wait to get signed up for the Everbridge notification. I try to hit that every time I get in here to go on.
You've had some slow sign up is what I was told.
Yeah, we need to go onto the city or county website and get signed up. That's emergency notifications that range from severe weather to amber alerts to crime sprees. We can get a hold of you and all kinds of things. Probably be using it tonight for snow emergencies. We do that. I know you don't want it to snow, but I think it's coming.
Man, he's just hammering that, isn't he?
Well, you get that look like if I look this way, it's not coming. Well, look at the radar. I think it's on its way.
Yeah, it's on its way.
But Everbridge is a good thing. We need to get people signed up on that, and we're experimenting. We have some different ways of trying to get the word out. It's a well-known issue with these notification systems that the biggest problem with them is getting people signed up on.
Well, you're not the only one on this. I know Watana is.
Yeah, Rice and Steele, about every county in the state has either Code Red or some of these different notification systems, and everybody struggles with the same thing, is getting people signed up, because if you're not signed up, you're not getting a notification. And a lot of, especially like with severe weather and things going on, you always hear, I didn't know if it was coming, or if I knew it was coming, I could have taken shelter. Well, we have a way to let you know when things are happening, but you have to sign up. I can't sign everybody up. I can help you. You can get a hold of us at the fire station, but you can go onto the city or county website, look for Everbridge notification system, and it's not hard to do. You can get signed up.
Yeah, it's an easy process, isn't it?
Yep. And that's it has to be, otherwise people aren't going to do it.
No. So again, what's that website?
That'd be the
people can get signed up on.
City of Faribault or Rice County
website.
And I don't know those exactly off the top of my head, but if you Google City of Faribault or Rice County, it'll come up.
You can Google anything these days.
Yes.
I mean, anything. Dusty Dienst is Faribault's fire chief. You guys are doing some major renovation over at the fire hall. I was over there, I don't know, a couple months back, and gave me a little mini tour as to what you're doing over there. It's going to be, you won't even recognize it from what it once was.
Yeah, it's fun to see. I take pictures, not every day because there's not always enough to take a picture of for progress every day, but painters are in there today, so we're kind of into the starting the finishes of the building. So painting today, hopefully next week sometime putting in the drop ceiling part, so starting to install some of the finishes. And then somewhere in May we'll move from our little nest downstairs where we're all working to the upstairs. It's a two-phase project, and then they'll start downstairs, so hopefully mid to late summer we'll be all done.
Yeah, we were talking that maybe you'll have an open house during Fire Prevention Week or something.
I would say for sure we'd be giving tours of it for sure by then, yes.
It's amazing. Not even touching the outside of the building, basically. I mean, there's no addition or anything, but you're going to have more operating room, right? Yeah,
we're going to better utilize our room, the space that we have. It was built in '68. Different number of firefighters, different ways of doing things now with technology and different setups with employees. We're reutilizing our space better.
And we were out in the garage looking at the trucks, and you were talking about how you have a nice plan together and to when you'll replace certain vehicles.
Yeah, it's certain vehicles get used more than others, so there's the ladder truck doesn't get used as much, thankfully, as the rescue truck that goes out multiple times every day. So there's different replacement schedules. We are actually going up next week to look at our replacement pumper. We have a 21-year-old pumper that is being replaced, and that's about life of a pumper for us is 20 years or so. So we're going up to Wyoming, Minnesota, and Rosenbauer, where they're building that one to do I think it's the pre-build or when they build a fire truck, it's a lot like a house. You know, they'll order in a chassis and then they build the box on the back of the chassis with the compartments and the layout that you want. So we're going up there to verify things, and hopefully sometime about May we'll be taking delivery on a new pumper.
So it's custom made for you then?
Yep. You have some options or some things that NFPA say you have to do and have to have, but there's some other stuff that we can customize to the way we operate, compartments and such.
And here I thought they were all pretty much the same.
You can buy a cookie cutter one, but not a whole lot of savings. Not a lot of savings in doing that, because by the time you get it and change it around and make it work, you do it anyway. So it's like building a house. You know, sometimes a building anew is about the same as remodeling.
And I'm going to guess that the townships are involved with purchasing a pumper truck.
A pumper truck is not. They're involved with the tanker. They actually own the tanker that we have. That's scheduled here coming up in the next few years. But this one is through the city. The city maintains. I think the rural has a medical grass fire pickup and the tanker that they have. They're in on.
That's all they're in on.
Yep.
Not the ladder or any of that stuff.
Nope.
Which would make sense.
Correct. We take, in our fire area, we take whatever is needed to whomever needs it.
Oh, gee, I forgot to ask you about this, and we're in the final minute, and you're probably not going to be able to answer in 30 seconds. You hear about the carbon monoxide detector requirement now on 16-foot boats longer with enclosed cabins?
I have not.
It was passed yesterday.
I have not. I think it's a great idea. I think I even have a fish house that has a carbon monoxide detector in it. Anywhere there's people, and there could be that gas, you need to have a carbon monoxide. I mean, it's only common sense.
Yeah, I thought kind of the same thing, to be honest. Well, that concludes today's edition of AM Minnesota. Again, tomorrow we'll be visiting with a doctor from Northfield about, well, it's